turn to what is the central premise of our discussion today, and that is our analysis that capitalism has reached a tipping point, that it has entered a new permanent crisis beyond reform. Reforms are being taken away in front of our eyes, beyond any real ability to recover itself, certainly in any way that's meaningful to the social needs of the working class. This is not a controversial thesis in our view. Certainly it should be subject to critique. It should be debated. What's controversial is that there are not enough revolutionary Marxists who are talking about it. That's the controversy. That's the problem. We're not contending that the analysis is a simple one. It's just not new. It's an application of Marxism to the present situation. Perhaps the simplest way of putting it, and maybe there's a downside to doing that, but bear with me. Fred said it in his own way. The productive forces of the world have reached such an incredible height that they're no longer compatible with capitalism. They've outgrown what has become a barbaric system that's just holding things down, that the world and its people and all life are now hostage to. This is very important, comrades. Understanding this is understanding what we have to look forward to, what our global class is going to look forward to. One crisis after another, perpetual crisis, crashes, depression, deflation, inflation, bubbles, a crash of the system, a crash of this industry. At the same time, constant efforts to restructure, downsize, and steal from the working class as a way to compensate for what capitalism is not getting. Because the markets, it does not have to dump its overproduced commodities on. Even what they're trying to do to the workers under the excuse of reducing the deficit is a form of restructuring. You don't need more Social Security. Work longer. And let's take away anything that is supposed to help sustain those who are not productive. Retirees, the poor, the disabled. It's another form of capitalist restructuring, just like downsizing and new wage levels and so forth. This is not common knowledge in the working class for many, many reasons. Perhaps the biggest reason is the bourgeoisie is very gifted at concealing it with their culture of lying and denial and deception and hiding the suffering and telling workers what they want in order to manipulate them towards one of the other imperialist parties. Some of the confusion is because workers are not accustomed to looking at the system. Their reaction is to look at their own situation and the situation of their family and their local situation. Understandably so. But our working class here is not trained to look at the system, just as they're trained to be passive. And this was the problem in the elections. They had no reason to come out and fight for any candidate. So the Tea Party and the money behind them did their thing. If they were to put a referendum on a WPA program, everybody gets a job, you would have had a different turnout. But the election wasn't about that. It was a setup. In time, workers will gain this consciousness in an own natural and uneven way, based on the struggle, based on exhausting all possibilities before choosing the struggle. And we'll be part of that. But we have to look at our consciousness. We're not above the workers. We're not elitists. But in order for us to be helpful, our consciousness has to be higher. Am I right?
That's right.
Or else we have nothing to offer.
Make it plain,
and if we have higher political consciousness and a sense of history, recent history, we know that the big problem is an ideological one. About a generation ago, capitalism declared victory over socialism. It's the end of history. Remember that? We won. There is no alternative to capitalism. Capitalist triumphalism, I think they called it. See? So get used to it. And this is what's been fed everyone. And it's had a big impact on the working class and on its organizations, and demoralizing impact. The question for us is, what do we do about it now? We know we have to be with the struggles. There are going to be many, many struggles, more than we can imagine or even cover. All of a defensive character, for the most part. Save this, save that, save this school, save this pension, save this group of workers from being laid off. Right now, most of it's public workers. We must be a part of all of these struggles and help them, and help the working class devise both the program and the strategy to fight back. And the anti-war struggle. Sometime today, somebody's going to talk about April 9th. It's important. The struggle to defend our comrades who have been targeted by the FBI, because it's them today and you know who it is tomorrow. We are not arguing that we should move away from these ongoing struggles. Most of them are local. But comrades and friends, we cannot merely relegate ourselves to just taking up the many, many local struggles, trying to connect with it the best we can. It's insufficient. Our job is not just to be there and to tell the working class. It's to try to illuminate the road ahead as best we can. And right now, that means we got to open up a campaign, comrades, sisters and brothers. We got to open up a campaign about abolishing capitalism and reviving the struggle for world socialism. If we don't, a lot's at stake. Think about it. What are we to do as things get worse and the questions begin to rise? Is this it? Is this as good as it gets? Is all life on the planet stuck in this capitalist crisis like the Titanic going down? What an unimaginably depressing thought. It will occur in the minds of many, especially the youth. And we have to say no. But we've got to find an exciting way to say it. Why? If it wasn't a problem, if it was known, we wouldn't have to think about it. But it's not known. So we have to try to do something to rectify the problem. That's the motivation for our campaign to abolish capitalism and revive the struggle for world socialism. If we don't do it, if we're silent, then it's surrendering to capitalist ideology. It's a surrender to bourgeois racism and war and all of their lies. And that's unacceptable. I think we can learn from the Tea Party. They're paid for by the ruling class, and they're very sharp on their class interests. We're not even coming, and they're already afraid of us. There's a reason why a lot of their stuff is socialist baiting. It's a preemptive strike. They see the handwriting on the wall. They know where the conditions can lead to. We should not be less sharp as to our ideological challenge in relationship to our class interests than our class enemies. It's important for the political movement. Those who some of us consider the vanguard, again, not some elite, but those based on their consciousness have dedicated themselves to serve the struggle, to serve the revolution. What's their thinking? Where are they at on this question? Are they discussing the capitalist economy? Are their heads and minds all submerged, understandably, in the mass work that is already overpowering them and too much for them, and it's liable to be more so as things get worse? That's not an acceptable situation for those who consider themselves political activists, communists, socialists, militants, however they characterize themselves. We have a responsibility to the vanguard and potential vanguard elements as individuals and as organizations to make sure that they're ideologically strong. They are perhaps the first layer to bring this discussion to. The need to have a campaign to abolish capitalism and re-raise the fight for world socialism. And let me tell you, it's not an abstraction to the day-to-day workers' struggle. It has direct impact. Direct impact. Think about it. Capitalist ideas are insidious and everywhere. You don't see them. They're insidious, but they're working their insidious, terrible influence. Even on the question put to workers about whether they should strike and what should be the goal of their strike. If you're told by the capitalists that we've got to work together to be competitive against the city next door or some other country or South Korea or India or China, what's the worker to think when the question of fighting to stop them from taking something away is posed? Well, how can we fight when we're supposed to cooperate, and giving up what we're asked to give up is part of that cooperation? It doesn't make sense, especially since this is the only system and it's the end of the world. And if the capitalists are right, every other worker is either directly or potentially my competitor, my enemy. Think about what it does to solidarity. Think about how it generates racism, how it becomes an excuse for war. It's not an abstraction, comrades. Think about it. If we're trying to agitate for a general strike in this country, and believe me, the way things are going, it's going to be on the radar screen. And we should be there like a lot of our comrades in other organizations talking about it. This working class has got to learn how to defend itself. That's number one. How can you conceive of a general strike, which means solidarity, coordinated action on a mass level with workers all over the place, in other localities, in other states, working in other industries, when you're told that that's completely against this idea of working together to compete successfully? This affects the workers' morale. Think about the deficit Fred talked about. What an amazing fantasy that they try to sell to the working class, that somehow in this country and in this world with unimaginable wealth, there's not enough for your Social Security. And there's not enough to take care of those who are in need because they're disabled. That there's not enough to provide for every need and comfort of everyone. And somehow we've got to cut, and we've got to cut your pension. It's such a crock, but it's swallowed Because that's what we're told. It's not our deficit. It's not an economic deficit. It's a capitalist system deficit. But you can't get there unless you're moving in an anti-capitalist direction. Unless you're opposing the norms of capitalism. It must be a world struggle too. I say renew, reawaken the world struggle for socialism. The crisis is a world crisis. Our class is a world class. And let me tell you, if you don't already know, you think that they've been trying to divide us based on where we happen to be. Well, that is going to be exacerbated in the immediate future. You're going to hear a lot of that from both Democrats and Republicans, mostly against China, but against India and other countries, other emerging economies. And some of the union leadership are ready to buy onto it and divert the class struggle into some ridiculous struggle that has no meaning for the working class of country against country, worker against worker. This is where things are going. This has to be a world struggle. True internationalists know that eventually every struggle anywhere is affected by the outcome of every struggle everywhere. And if you wear Jay's face on your shirt, unless you understand it, you should take the shirt off. Because we understood this. Saying was internationalist about crime, so much so that he couldn't stay in one place. The G20 summit, correctly called the Summit of Rich People and their puppets. And actually, in addition to the G20 countries, there were 120 of the biggest bankers and corporate executives there who were really calling the shots. And what are they doing? Our whole life, our future's in their hands. And they're fighting over who's going to get this market to push their overproduced commodities. That our workers are being fired to make more productive. It's as if capitalism was a disease in a very advanced stage in our body. And instead of our organs working together to sustain the body in cooperation for the health of the whole body, the organs are fighting each other, trying to steal nutrition, trying to pump some enzyme, doing all sorts of crazy stuff that, ends up in the body breaking down. That's what capitalism is right now. That's what the brothers. That's what capitalism is. We have got to open up a campaign. We don't have the details, but that's for us to discuss here and with other groups beyond this meeting. But it's got to be a real campaign. The campaign to abolish capitalism and renew the world struggle for socialism must be propagandistic. But it has to be more than that. There has to be big events associated with it. Big rallies. Big meetings. Both inside and outside. And it should be close to the real struggle, not apart from it. International events. Yes. And we haven't forgotten our call for socialists to unite. Some people have called us naive. Oh, the socialist movement is so fragmented and so, at each other's throat, and you can't take it serious and so forth. Well, let me tell you that. That may be true, I don't know. But if you're a revolutionary and you have what it takes to envision revolution and a new world, you should have what it takes to call for unity amongst socialists, especially those who may have more in common than not. If you can't do that, how do you expect anyone to take you serious? Finally, this struggle, this campaign to abolish capitalism and to revive the struggle for world socialism needs to be integrated into the mass struggle, not only on the local and national level, But on the international level, one of the most important days in the last 10 years, we didn't stop the war, but that doesn't take away from this fact, was February 15th and 16th, 2003. How many people remember that? That was the day. Wasn't perfect, different groups, lots of differences, social democrats, communists, pacifists, whatever, the whole throng of political ideologies. But for 2 days, we brought out millions of people around the world to say no to war. We've got to do that for jobs. We've got to do that against foreclosures. We've got to do that about abolishing capitalism. We must also have a concrete program that goes with a campaign to abolish capitalism and bring back socialism on a world level. We must have concrete demands. Social rights, the right to a job, a home, health care, education, and all the things you need. Comrades, I tell you, this struggle is necessary. It will help our class. It will help radicals. It will help everybody. It will give us a hand up in this situation. Our job now is to figure out whether it's the right thing, who to ask to join us, and how to proceed. Socialism or death?